And we're continuing with advice to Pandit Shashatar in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're about 5 pages into it. And our last section, we were talking about God listening to prayer. And before that were the two kinds of ego. Tonight, we're going to talk about the different classes of perfect souls. This little PDF that I have, they went through and put section titles, which are not in the original. So it's kind of nice. They're topic oriented. So today, different classes of souls. The master is talking, and he's been talking with Mani Malik and a few people sitting around in his room. And he said, in order to realize God, a devotee should make use of a particular attitude, the attitude of a hero or a friend or a handmaid or of a child. So you get to choose how you're going to approach God. God will appear to you in your highest ideal, I like to think. I have some friends who are very into these near-death experience things that are written and shared. And quite often, there's many common features or that are generally common to these descriptions. One is going through a tunnel with a bright light at the end. And usually when they get to the end, some people see Jesus meets them there. Some people, it's their grandmother. Some people, it's their husband, and so from after reading those, I just kind of thought that ultimately, basically, it's whoever has taught you the most about love, whoever you have the whatever comes to your mind when you think of the most perfect love that you can think of. And so we get to have that relationship with the divine. You can worship the divine as your father, which is very common, as your master, also quite common, as your lover, not so common, but possible, as your husband or wife, or as your child, or your sibling, or your friend. So you can have all of those relationships, and to some extent, it's in the beginning. It's good to establish one, one that you really feel and really experience in your practice, and then once you've kind of gotten established, then at different times you can have different relationships. There's times when you want to call up a friend, and times when you want to call up your brother, call up a hero. So these are the different types of classes here. And Mani Malik answers, he says, yes, well, only then can one feel attached to God. It's only through that defined relationship that you can actually develop this relationship. And the master goes on, he says, for many days I cherished the feeling that I was a companion of the Divine Mother. I used to say, I am the handmaid of Brahma Mayi, the blissful mother. O companions of the Divine Mother, make me the mother's handmaid. I shall go about proudly saying, I am Brahma Mayi's handmaid. So yes, if you read the Great Master, which is an account of the sadhanas, the different types of sadhana that Ramakrishna practiced and went through, you'll see in there he dressed as a woman for 6 months, and approached God as his handmaid, as his handmaid. I have to plug my thing in here. It just went low battery on me. So as the handmaid of God. And he did such a good job of it that people couldn't even tell that he was in costume. They didn't recognize him at all. So, for many days, I cherished this feeling as the handmaiden of God. Some souls realize God without practicing any spiritual discipline. They're called Nitya Siddha, eternally perfect. Those who have realized God through austerity, japa, and the like are called Sadhana Siddha, perfect through spiritual discipline. Again, there are those called Kripa Siddha, perfect through divine grace. These last may be compared to a room kept dark 1,000 years, which becomes light the moment that a lamp is brought into it. So all these different ways that people, reach their enlightenment, But in all of these ways, it's never the result of work. It's never results of the effort that bring you that enlightenment. That enlightenment is a gift of pure grace, always in all the paths. That final realization is not caused. And why is that? Because it has always existed in us. Our realization is within us right now. We have simply not placed our identity in that space. We've placed our identity usually in the thought of ourself amongst all of our other thoughts. And so we define ourself in relation to thoughts. And so we don't normally have that experience of absolute freedom like that, where you're not predefined in any way. Your story doesn't limit you. So these different ways of realizing God, the eternally perfect, are the ones who they're like the incarnations, and some of the direct disciples, that they've just always known who they were, and they keep coming back to the world, or they keep coming with the avatar. Whenever the avatar comes, he brings a retinue of helpers with him, and quite often those will be this class of people, these ever realized folks whose delusion is super, super thin, that it takes nothing but the words of the guru or the slightest effort on the part of the person to have their realization. And he says, then there are those who are, what is it, sadhana siddha, those who have done the practice, and gotten their ego thinned out and cleaned themselves up in that sense through their relationship with the divine. And then there's the last, the kripa. Kripa is grace, perfected through divine grace. And Ramakrishna talks about these are like the stranger who goes and tries to get the red ball out of the child's hand, and the child won't have anything of it, won't give him that ball no matter what. And then some complete stranger walks by, doesn't even want the ball, and the child runs after him. Yeah, here, take the ball. And so some people get realization that way. They weren't even looking for it. They're just going on with their life. And mother just is in a mood and goes and gives them their realization. Also, that wonderful day of at the Kalpataru tree, the wish-fulfilling tree, when the master was giving some of the highest experiences to the devotees that day. So just gifts of grace, There is also a class of devotee called the Hatha Siddhi. That is to say, they have suddenly attained God vision. Their case is like that of a poor boy who has suddenly found favor with a rich man. The rich man marries his daughter to the boy, and along with her gives him land, house, carriage, servants, and so forth. There's still another class of devotees, the Swapna Siddha, who have had the vision of God in a dream. Surendra smiling. Let us go to sleep then. We shall wake and find ourselves babus, aristocrats. The master tendedly. You're already a babu. When the letter A is joined to the letter ka, ka becomes ka. It is futile to add another A. If you add it, you will still have the same ka. I'll laugh. The Nitya Siddha is in a class apart. He's like Arani wood. A little rubbing produces fire. You can get fire from it even without rubbing. The Nitya Siddhi realizes God by practicing slight spiritual discipline, and sometimes without practicing any at all. But he does practice spiritual discipline after realizing God. He is like a gourd or a pumpkin vine, first fruit and then flower. The pundit smiled at this illustration. Master, there is the instance of Prahlada. He was a Nitya Siddha. While writing the letter Ka, he shed a stream of tears. The master was pleased with the pundit's humility. He praised him to the devotees. He has such a nice nature. You find no difficulty in driving a nail into a mud wall, but its point breaks if you try and drive it into a stone, and still it will not pierce it. There are people whose spiritual consciousness is not at all awakened, even though they hear about God 1,000 times. They're like a crocodile whose hide you cannot make any impression with a sword. Pundit. But one can hurt a crocodile by throwing a spear into its belly. Everyone laughs, of course. The master is smiling. What good is there in reading a whole lot of scripture? What good is there in the study of philosophy? What is the use of talking big? In order to learn archery, one should first aim at a banana tree, and then at a reed, and then at a wick, and at last at a flying bird. At the beginning, one should concentrate on God with form. Then there are devotees who are beyond the three gunas. They are eternally devoted to God, like Narada. These devotees behold Krishna as Chinmaya, all spirit. His abode is Chinmaya, his devotee as Chinmaya. To them, God is eternal. His abode is eternal. His devotee is eternal. Those who reasoned and speculate following the process of neti do not accept the incarnation of God. This is for the path of Jnana. They do not accept the incarnation of God. Hazra says well that divine incarnation is only for the bhakta and not for the jnani, because the jnani is quite content with his ideal, I am he, right? Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees remained silent a while. The pundit resumed the conversation. Sir, how does one get rid of callousness? Laughter makes me think of muscles and nerves. Grief makes me think of the nervous system. The master smiling. That is why Narayan Shastri used to say, the harmful effect of the study of the scriptures is that it encourages reasoning and arguing. Right? When we study the scriptures, you see realization has nothing to do with this here. That we have to separate out from mind and body. We have to come through discernment and understanding, or through love of God. We have to come to realize that we're observing a body and observing a mind, that we are not that, and we are not affected by its conditions and circumstances. But as long as we think we are, we are. You know, it's like being in a dream. If you're dreaming at night, you're being chased through the streets of New York by a violent gang. Well, as long as you believe the dream to be real, you're going to run in panic and fear. But as soon as you know the nature of the dream and you know your relationship with the dream, that you are the container of the dream and not in the dream, you'll stop running. You have no more fear. You'll understand that no matter what happens to that dream body, it cannot touch you. That the world, the universe of the dream and the universe of the sleeping body in the bed are two different worlds. They cannot touch each other, right? They cannot be experienced in each other. And so in that sense, you know, when you believe these things to be real, when you believe your karma to be your karma, when you believe yourself to be the doer, then you're responsible. Then the narrative begins, then your story begins, and your story will then describe the moment to you and will tell you what it is and how it looks in your story. But in that state, you can't see it as it is. So that's why he says the harmful effect of the study of the scriptures is that it encourages reasoning and arguing. It encourages you to look for God up here in the mind and to think that it's what you know or the philosophy that you understand that's going to bring you to your realization. But your realization is here. It's before mind, before the heart, and it's yours always. It's pre-existent. All that you have to do is identify with it. Learn who you are, uncover the delusion that your story given to you by your mind about your body, to get rid of that story, throw it out, and experience the moment fresh as it is, without definition. So, yes, the harmful effect of the study of the scriptures is that it encourages us to reason and to argue. The pundit, is there no way for us then? Master, yes, there's the path of discrimination, discernment. In a song occurs the line, ask her son discrimination about the truth. The way lies through discrimination, renunciation, and passionate yearning for God, right? That's how you get there. And they're not three separate things. Discernment leads to renunciation. When you discern that that which is changing is unreal, that in this world, nothing that you desire in this world stays what it is. Right? A Mercedes turns to a pile of rust. That's not what you wanted. Your beautiful young husband or wife turns into an old an old goat. That's not what you wanted. All your sweet little puppy turns into a giant dog, that comes bounding through the house, breaking your pots and pans or whatnot. That's not what we want. And so discernment is what leads us to renunciation. So when we see the unreality of something, when we pay attention to how our desires actually affect us and how they actually turn us into servants of the body and servants of the mind, or slaves of the body and mind, then we renounce. We're like, no more of this. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Right. And when we hit that level, we turn around and begin the work. And the passionate love of God is what determines your earnestness, what determines your sincerity as you begin your quest. So you want it to be a passionate love for God because you want to really push through and do the things that are necessary, because you're going to be asked to lay down everything. And so to do that, you've better discern. You better discern. You better have a lot of earnestness and sincerity and a real love for this knowledge, for this divine truth. Unless a man practices discernment, he cannot utter the right words. One time, after expounding religion at great length, Pandit Samtyayi said, "God is dry." He reminded me of the man who once said, "My uncle's cowshed is full of horses." Now, does anyone keep horses in a cowshed? With a smile. You have to become like a chana bhara, fried in butter. Now it will be good for you and for others as well if you are soaked in syrup a few days, just a few days. All right, that's soaked in syrup. That's what your practice is. Sitting down quietly in the presence of your beloved. That's soaking in the syrup. And we want to be able to focus our minds, to hold our concentration, right? We concentrate on the presence. And the mind, is going to be interested in different things. It's going to pull that needle off of its base. You keep wavering back and forth, but you just keep coming and putting it back on. It doesn't matter that the mind is wandering. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to fix it. Just keep bringing it back. Okay? Bring it back over and over. And eventually you won't have to do it. Eventually it'll stick where you place it. But that's the practice, to train our mind so that you can hold it on the thought of God, so that love can build, that love can accumulate inside. The longer you hold that electrical connection, all that power goes into you. And this is what it is to keep your mind on the thought of God, the thought of pure love, in direct relationship with it, so that it becomes a direct experience from within. The sweetmeat is over-fried. It has become charred, the pundit says, smiling. The master with a laugh, "No, no, it is brown as a cockroach, just the right color." Right. Hazra, the sweetmeat is well cooked. It has become spongy. Now it will soak up the syrup nicely. Master, you see, there is no need to read too much of the scriptures. If you read too much, you will be inclined to reason and argue. Nankta used to teach me thus: what you get by repeating the word Gita 10 times is the essence of the book. In other words, if you repeat Gita 10 times, it's reversed into Tagi, right? Gita, 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 Gita. And at some point you get confused and you'll start the word in the middle, Gita, Tagi. So that's what it means. It means renunciation. It reverses into Tagi, which indicates renunciation. Yes, the way to realize God is through discernment, renunciation, and yearning for him. What kind of yearning? One should yearn for God as the cow with yearning heart runs after its calf, right? The way that a mother loves its child, that's how you run after that child, you know. Just sitting in that peace, sitting there and just letting yourself be filled up, not thinking about it, not directing it, just silent knowing that you are the child of the beloved, that there is an unlimited, unconditioned love. Mm. Pundit, the same thing is said in the Vedas. O God, we call on you as the cow lows for the calf. Master, add your tears to your yearning. And if you can renounce everything through discernment and dispassion, then you will be able to see God. That yearning brings about God intoxication, whether you follow the path of knowledge or the path of devotion. The sage Durvasa was mad with the knowledge of God, right? As long as the closer you draw to God, the more time you spend doing your practice and sitting in the presence, then the more of this bliss you'll become aware of in yourself, because that sitting with God tunes your soul, as it were. You know, when Greg and I would play in the choir together, you know, I would always have to hit the different keys on the piano for him to tune his guitar to that. When I'd be ding ding ding, and he'd be like ding 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 ding, back and forth and back and forth. And practice is really about that. And spiritual practice, you know, when we sit in the presence of God, where that vibration's very high, very pure, and through constant company, we become like that. We become tuned to that presence. And if we can manage to stay in that presence, we stay in tune, right? And when the guitar is staying in tune, it makes good music. This is how life becomes fulfilling for us. This yearning brings about God intoxication. God intoxication is drunkenness on love. It's literally an intoxication of just being full of love, just so contented, and not just a contentment. It's an overflowing, because the source of the love within you is infinite. And you know, at first we just touch it barely at all. Oh, God's loving. And then one day a freight train comes zipping through the middle of our practice. We wonder, what in the world was that? And that was God. That was the love of the beloved. The yearning brings about God intoxication, whether you follow the path of knowledge or the path of devotion, of Gyani or Bhakti. The sage Durvasa was mad with divine knowledge of God. There is a great deal of difference between the knowledge of a householder and that of an all-renouncing sannyasi. The householder's knowledge is like the light of a lamp, which illumines only the inside of a room. He cannot see anything. With the help of such knowledge, except for his own body and his immediate family. But the knowledge of the all-renouncing monk is like the light of the sun. Through that light, he can see both inside and outside the room. Chaitanya Deva's knowledge had the brilliance of the sun of knowledge. Further, he radiated the soothing light of the moon of devotion. He was endowed with both the knowledge of Brahman and ecstatic love for gods. He was that classic Jnana Bhakta there, endowed with both this knowledge of Brahman, his Jnani practice, and the ecstatic love of God, which is the highest ideal of the Bhakta. To the Pandit, one can attain spiritual consciousness through both affirmation and negation. There is the positive path of love and devotion, right? And that is where you begin to see your beloved everywhere. So it's seen as the positive path. You see God there, you see God there, you see God there, you see God there. And then there is the negative path, the path of knowledge and discrimination, where you're trying to sort yourself out. Okay, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the doer, I'm not, and trying to back out into that reality of being the container of all things. Right? And he's saying that either one of these will lead you to spiritual consciousness. You are preaching the path of knowledge, but that creates a very difficult situation. There, the guru and the disciple do not see each other. Sukadeva went to Janaka for instruction about the knowledge of Brahman. Janaka said to him, "You must pay me the guru's fee beforehand. When you attain the knowledge of Brahman, you won't pay me the fee, because the knower of Brahman sees no difference between guru and disciple." Right? So pay me up front before you know that we're all one without a second. And then you won't bother paying that non-existent second. So pay up front. Both negation and affirmation are ways to realize one and the same goal. The infinite are the opinions, and infinite are the ways. But you must remember one thing. The injunction is that the path of devotion described by Narada is best suited to the Kali Yuga, to this age. According to this path, first comes bhakti, then bhava. When bhakti is mature, higher than bhava are mahabhava and prema. An ordinary mortal does not attain mahabhava and prema. He who has achieved these has realized the goal. That is to say, he has attained God. Pandit, in expounding religion, one has to use a great many words. While preaching, eliminate the head and tail. That is to say, emphasize only the essentials, right? Don't get caught up in the details. The Pandit and Mani Malik became engaged in conversation. Mani was a member of the Brahmo Samaj. The Pandit argued vehemently about the good and bad sides of the Samaj. Sri Ramakrishna was seated on a small couch and looked on, smiling. Presently, he remarked, "This is the tamasic aspect of sattva, the attitude of a hero. This is necessary. One should not hold one's tongue at the sight of injustice and untruth. Suppose a bad woman wants to drag you from the path of righteousness. You must then assume the heroic attitude and say, 'What, you witch? How you dare to injure my spiritual life? I shall cut your body in two right now.'" so, so there is a balance, what spiritual life isn't all about just being drunk with love in the corner, and letting the world just go by. You're deeply engaged because you're deeply conscious. This is one of the things that's quite unusual about this spiritual enlightenment, is that, yes, there's intensity there, but there's absolute awareness there. Also, it's like Ramakrishna, he says, that he always knew where everything was in his room. He never had to go looking for his umbrella or go looking for his keys. He was very disciplined, and everything was kept exactly in its place. And one time, one of his young boys had forgotten to carry the umbrella back from where they had been talking. And Ramakrishna gave him that lesson. He says, "No, see, the mind of a devotee shouldn't be like that. You should be disciplined. You keep your keys in the place for the keys. You keep your shoes in the place for the shoes. Everything should be in its order so that the mind is not cluttered, so that the mind is not disturbed, And you can see how that is, because Philip and I have been friends for a long time. We were roommates for a while in the 90s, and he was always so frustrated with me because anytime I would leave the house, I would always have to spend at least 10 minutes looking for my keys, because I would just always randomly sit them down somewhere and forget where I sat them. And so every time we wanted to get out of the house, I would be looking for my keys. And he would tell me again and again, it's like, why don't you just put them in the same place every time? Why don't you just get a little hook? For all the years that I knew him, I never got a hook. I never put him in the same place. But finally, In my new room here in Santa Barbara, I have a little box in the corner over there, and all my keys get tossed in there when I walk in the room. So, but you see, this is the thing, this disciplining of mind and the way that you live your life is important. You know, if you live in a room that's all disheveled and all messy, and you think that you're going to use your mind to realize God, your mind is the condition of your room. A disciplined mind has a disciplined environment that it dwells in. You know, so if your room is a house is cluttered and unkept, you can know that that indicates that your mind is cluttered and unkept. And so discipline is important. You know, things go where they go. Things remain clean and not lazy, right? Because it's the ego is what drives laziness. Yes. So the master is telling the pundit, when you teach, eliminate the head and the tail. That is to say, emphasize only the essentials. And then he's talking about having that serious attitude of the hero, right? Don't settle for things that are injuring your spiritual life. Have a serious attitude about them. Don't flirt with them, you know. Don't put yourself near to the flame to feel its warmth when you're talking about your vices. You have to be adamant and you have to be strong and you have to be absolute about those for your renunciation to take root. Otherwise, they creep in little by little, by little by little, and suddenly you're completely lost and you have no idea why, because you weren't aware that you had been sliding and playing games with your discernment, playing games with your renunciation, right? Oh, it's no big deal. Oh, that's everybody's like that. No, nobody can do that, right? We make those excuses. With a smile, Sri Ramakrishna said to the Pandit, Mani Malik has been following the tenets of the Brahmo massage for a very long time. You can't convert him to your views. Is it an easy thing to destroy old tendencies? Once there lived a very pious Hindu who always worshipped the Divine Mother and chanted her name. When the Muslims conquered the country, that's the Islam, conquered the country, they forced him to embrace Islam. They said to him, You are now a Muslim. Say Allah. From now on, you must repeat only the name of Allah. With great difficulty, he repeated the word Allah, but every now and then he blurted out Jagadamba. At that, the Muslims were about to beat him. Thereupon he said to them, I beseech you, please don't kill me. I have been trying my utmost to repeat the name of Allah, but our Jagadamba has filled me up to the throat. She pushes out your Allah. Everyone laughs. To the Pundit, please don't say anything to Mani Malik. You must know that there are different tastes. There are also different powers of digestion. God has made different religions and different creeds to suit different aspirants. By no means are we all fit for the knowledge of Brahman. Therefore, the worship of God with form has been provided. The mother brings home a fish for her children. She curries part of the fish, part of it she fries, and with another part she makes palau. By no means can all digest the palau. So she makes fish soup for those who have weak stomachs. Further, some want pickled or fried fish. There are different temperaments. There are differences in the capacity to comprehend. Everyone sat in silence. Sri Ramakrishna said to the Pandit, Go and visit the temples. Take a stroll in the garden. It was about 5:30 in the afternoon, and the Pandit left the room with his friends and several of the devotees. I really think this is a beautiful worldview. You know, that the mother has, you know, all of this variety out of love and out of consideration for all of the different moods and styles and talents and conditions and attributes of the devotees. You know, you've got someone who's quite stupid, you know, can't remember anything. You got a person who can't sit still for 10 seconds, always has to be bouncing and vibrating around the room somehow. You have someone else who never wants to get off the couch. They're very sedimentary. And God walks in and he doesn't chastise all of that. He's like, for you, you're going to do bhakti yoga. For you, you're going to do Raja yoga. For you, it's Jnana yoga. Oh, for you, there's no yoga, right? There's just simply discernment. All these different ways that God has to inspire us and to lift us up, that he has left no stone unturned. He's given you an infinite variety within this universe to sing the scriptures to you. And so find the way that you hear the scriptures and go there. That's why I ended up in Colorado, because I went camping that weekend with Greg and came around that corner and just saw this. Oh my Lord. I could not believe how beautiful that valley was. I just could not believe it. And I just I felt like I had been doing practice for all the days, because I just had this inner explosion of joy, of bliss that I just stood there weeping. It was just so amazing. And so God has done that for us in thousands and thousands of ways every day. And if we're not in tune, we just walk by them. We just miss them. Right. So I'm always encouraging people, see the little vignettes. Be alert during your day, because the Divine Mother has put together little vignettes, little love letters, little sights of beauty, little things of intrigue for you to find and ponder about and learn from, And so keep your eyes open all day long. You're living in scripture. This world is scripture. The experience of this world is reading the scripture. And how do you read the scripture? With attention, right? With attention. And so you always stay aware of the presence. And by being aware of the presence and of your nature, you'll start seeing that the scriptures of experience, the scriptures of being, begin to leak into your mind. You begin to understand things because the universe is becoming pure for you. Right? It's kind of a funny thing, because as you purify, the world that you live in gets purified. As you become God focused, the universe you live in becomes God focused. Little by little, that's why Gandhi says, be the change that you want to see in the world, because as you change, the world you live in will change. The world that we live in is not material. It's your reflection. And you will begin to see it, in the way that you see yourself. And if you identify yourself as a body mind, then this world is a cacophony of confusion, because there's so many body minds running everywhere, fighting everywhere. But when you come to know in a deeper way each of the way that you truly are inside, then you start to see the world very, very differently, because you know yourself quite different, and your assumptions about others will be radically different. So we practice and we practice and we practice. After a while, the master went with M toward the bathing ghat on the Ganges. He said to M, Baburam now says, what shall I gain by study? On the bank of the river, he met the Pandit and said to him, aren't you going to the Kali temple? The Pandit said, yes, sir, let's go together. With a smiling face, Sri Ramakrishna proceeded to the temple through the courtyard. He said to the Pandit, listen to a song. He sang, is Kali, my mother, really black? The naked one of blackest hue lights the lotus of the heart. And as he was going through the courtyard, he quoted to the Pandit from a song, lighting the lamp of knowledge in the chamber of your heart, behold the face of the mother, Brahman's embodiment. They came to the temple. Sri Ramakrishna saluted the Divine Mother, touching the ground with his forehead. Red hibiscus flowers and bilwa leaves adorned the mother's feet. Her 3 eyes radiated love for her devotees. 2 of her hands were raised as if to give them boons and reassurance. The other 2 hands held symbols of death. She was clothed in a sari of Benares silk and was decked with ornaments. Referring to the image, one of the party remarked, I heard that it was made by the sculptor Nabin. The master answered, yes, I know. but to me, she's the embodiment of spirit. As Sri Ramakrishna was coming back to his room with the devotees, he said to Babaram, "Come with us." M also joined them. It was dusk. The master was sitting on the semicircular porch west of his room. Babaram and M sat near him. He was in a mood of partial ecstasy. Rakal was not then living with Sri Ramakrishna, and therefore the master was having difficulties about his personal service. Several devotees lived with him, but he could not bear the touch of just anyone during his spiritual moods. He hinted to Babaram, "Do stay with me. It will be very nice. In this mood, I cannot allow others to touch me." The Pandit entered the master's room after visiting the temples. The master said to him from the porch, "Take some refreshments." The Pandit said that he had not yet performed his evening devotions. At once, Sri Ramakrishna stood up and sang in an exalted mood, "Why should I go to Ganga or Gaya, to Kashi, Kanchi, or Prabhas, so long as I can breathe my last with Kali's name upon my lips? What need of rituals has a man? What need of devotions any more, if he repeats the mother's name at the 3 holy hours?" You know, see that? It's all for grace. And so, in a sense, why do we do any of it? Well, we do it because of the bliss of doing it. We do it for the enjoyment of being in the presence of God. We do it for the reminding of our nature, for the courage, for the encouragement of seeing that we are of the nature of God, for the exploration of it, for the understanding that expands mind, that gives you peace, that isn't conditioned and isn't based on moods of the mind or conditions of the body. You know, we practice for the love of it, for its own sake, not to achieve because there's nothing to achieve, not to attain because there's nothing to attain. We do it for the bliss of being what we are, you know, an absolute and pure love that's free, available, and equanimous in all directions for everyone and everything. And so we practice to open our mind, to let the limits of our ego fall, right? So that love can come out unfiltered, unprismed by selfishness. Intoxicated with an ecstatic love, the master said, "How long should one perform devotions? So long as one's mind does not merge in God while repeating Om." Right? And so until that time when we go into samadhi, just repeating the word Om, until that time, we keep doing our devotions. We keep writing our love letters to God. We keep saying our prayers. We keep singing our songs. We keep repeating our mantras. We keep memorizing our scriptures. We keep talking about it with each other, you know, and then one day you'll get half of the word Om out of your mouth and you'll look at your watch and 3 hours has passed. And you would not even have finished a 2-letter word. Then you know, then you know the learning part is finished, right? Pandit, then let me eat the refreshments. I shall perform the devotions later on. Master, no, I don't want to obstruct the current of your life. It is not good to renounce anything before the proper time arrives. When the fruit ripens, the flower drops off of itself. One shouldn't forcibly tear off the green branch of a coconut tree. That injures the tree. You see there, this is something very important to know, because ego will drive you to do great deeds of wonderment. You know, oh, I'm going to go on a 10-day Vipassana retreat. I'm not going to say a word and I'm going to meditate 10 hours a day, right? And you do that. But Swami Prabhupada says, he says, yes, there's some good in it. He says, but if you haven't been practicing regularly before those 10 days, and if you aren't practicing regularly after those 10 days, then know you've caused yourself some great trouble, because you will amass a great deal of spiritual energy within you from doing all of that practice for 10 days. But when you're done with that 10 days and you go home, If you were an angry man before, now you'll be a very angry man. If you were a lusty person before, now you're going to be a very lusty person until all of that energy has been expended that you gathered up. Because you have to do the practice to close the holes of the lower chakras, right? To make sure that you don't interpret that energy as sex energy, right? That's the first mistake, especially in the West. You'll hear people say we're sexual creatures, we're sexual entities. Sex is supposed to be a part of our life. It's supposed because they take that wonderful prana that we have inside and they interpret that as being sex energy. So when they gather up that sex energy, they haven't had sex in a few days, they interpret it sexually and say, oh my gosh, I'm being driven to expend, this energy that I've gathered. That's the huge mistake. That's not sex energy within you. That's prana, that's life, and you have to learn to enjoy that energy for its own sake, not for something that it does or brings or it does. You simply allow it to accumulate and you enjoy the feeling of that vibrancy, that aliveness, and know that to be all it is. It's not pushing you toward anything else. It's not there to fulfill a desire. It's not there for anything. It's your life. It's what you are. And so you just sit in that space and allow that energy to grow and to build. And you just keep directing it higher and higher and higher to more and to less and less selfish means, to less and less selfish ways of thinking, right? And that energy is what gives your ability to focus. That energy is what gives you the ability to see, to touch these subtle things inside that most people spend their entire life in the same body with all of that bliss, never knowing it, never touching it, never finding it. And so this is why we practice. This is why we go, so that we can find that precious thing that has given us so many useless things to run after. Our longing for things of the world, those symbols of love, the symbols that are molded in matter, they can't give you anything because they're just symbols. They're signposts, right? The only thing that gives you anything is the moment and from within your own self. That is the only place that anything exists, anything real. It's in this moment, not in your future and not in your past. It's now. This is where God is. All right, so this renunciation has to be the result of discernment, right? You can't just say, hey, I'm never going to do that again. You have to work on the discernment so that you can break the attachment, right? So that you don't want to do it again. And what happens is through this discernment, you get to a point where you don't want to do it again, but you're still going to be doing it because you've got this freight train of habit that's still causing it, right? And at that point, when you're being forced to act in ways that you really don't want to indulge in, that you really don't want to be a part of, but you're somehow still finding yourself locked in those habits, that's the time for the renunciation. That's the time. When you've come to realize the nature of the thing, it's ridiculous, it's silly, it's never given you what it's promised, that you've always are just more hungrier afterwards every time anyway. At that point, you come in with that sledgehammer of renunciation, that grand renunciation that Ramakrishna talks about. And of course, he talks about that one grand renunciation. That's all that's necessary. And that's the final one, when you've done the discernment and finally you just, with a roar, you just like a dragon inhaling to get all that power behind his fire and then exhales and just, burns the whole place down. That's that one final renunciation where you've seen the nature of material, the idea of material, not just the material world. It never was a material world, but you see the wrong thinking in seeing things as material and seeing things as separate, in seeing and not understanding that this world is Brahman, is dream, right? That it does not have its own reality, that you've given it. When you've come to know that, when you've spent those years or months or however long it took you to do it, to understand that all of this is Brahman, all of this is mind stuff, dream objects made of a substance that can be anything and everything at once, right? And when you come to know that, then that final move of renouncing the external world completely, there's nothing there for me. And you turn and go inward and touch the divine heart, touch the live wire of prana within yourself, the love of God. Then we know. The flower drops off of itself when the fruit is ripened. So Surrender was about to leave and he invited his friends into his carriage. The master was still in an ecstatic mood and said, "Don't take more people than your horse can draw." This is India. You know? It's like I remember being in a cab that I had hired to drive me up to Gangotri through the Himalayas. And I'd hired this cab for 10 days, and Philip and I were in the back seat, and the cab driver was in the front seat. We were driving through the woods, and there were like these 12 or 14 Indian men and a broken down cab on the side of the road. And so they got out in the road and blocked our way, wouldn't let us pass. And they came and surrounded our cab, and they were asking I didn't speak any whatever they were speaking, obviously. And so they were talking to our driver, and the driver says they want to know if they can ride with us. And I was, I was like, well, they won't fit. I said, tell them that three of them, we can take three of them. We'll put two in the front seat and one more in the back here with us. I was a fool. I should have told that driver to go and go quickly, because as soon as we opened the door, all 12 of those men piled into that car. And I was sitting there pushed up against the window in the back seat, a yuppie from America who so utterly uncomfortable and so angry and spoiled. I was sitting there just the whole time. So I read this and I understand exactly what the master is saying. Don't fill up your cab with more people than what that horse can carry, right? Don't load your truck so high that the front wheels come off the front. Don't fill the cart up so much that the horse is lifted off the ground. You can see all these pictures online. So it's funny to hear the master here saying it to him. like you shouldn't have to tell somebody that, Don't fill the cab up with so many people the horse can't move. Don't do it. Surendra took leave of the master. The Pandit left the room to perform his worship, and M and Baburam saluted the master. They were about to leave for Calcutta, and Sri Ramakrishna was still in an ecstatic mood. The master to M, I cannot utter a word now. Stay a few minutes. M again took his seat and waited for the master's command. Sri Ramakrishna motioned to Baburam to take a seat and asked him to fan him a little. M also took part in rendering this personal service to the master. The master to M tenderly, "Why don't you come here so frequently now?" M, "Oh, not for any special reason. I've just been rather busy at home." Master, "Yesterday I came to know Baburam's inner nature. That is why I have been trying so hard to persuade him to live with me. The mother bird hatches the egg in the proper time. Boys like Baburam are pure in heart. They have not yet fallen into the clutches of lust and greed, or woman and gold. Isn't that so?" M, "It is true, sir. They are all still stainless." The master, "They're like a new pot. Milk kept in it will not sour." M, "Yes, sir." Master, "I need Baburam here. I pass through certain spiritual states when I need someone like him. He says he must not all at once live with me permanently, for it will create difficulties. His relatives will make trouble. I'm asking him to come here Saturdays and Sundays." Right. So the master was talking about that when he's in those states of samadhi, there's no egoism. The body is absolutely pure in that state. And when somebody who isn't pure, somebody who's selfish, has lots of me and mine in their body, touches him at that point, it would burn or sting. He describes it in several ways. One is the stinging of a scorpion. There's like a firebrand burning him. And so he needed a very pure person, a very dedicated practitioner to stay with him, so that, like, if he was standing up and goes into ecstasy, the person can hold him and stabilize him, not let him fall over. Or if he's on the ground, to be able to move him. So he was needing Baburam for that. All right. It's 5:28, so we'll stop there for tonight.
Maharaj,